It is one of the most chilling and enduring mysteries of the 20th century, a story that begins with youthful ambition and ends in utter, baffling tragedy. In the heart of Russia's Ural Mountains, a place known as Kholat Syakhl, or Dead Mountain, 9 experienced hikers vanished under the most bizarre of circumstances. What happened to the Dyatlov group on that fateful night in February 1959? The official investigation closed the case, citing a compelling natural force as the cause. But that simple explanation has never satisfied those who have looked closer at the haunting details left behind in the snow. The questions that remain are as cold and sharp as the mountain winds that still blow over the pass today. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. He was a skilled and respected outdoorsman, and he had assembled a team of his peers for this expedition. The team was composed of 7 men and 2 women, all of them experienced in long-distance ski treks and mountain survival. Their goal was ambitious but achievable for a group with their skills, to travel over 300 kilometers through the unforgiving northern Urals, and, in the process, summit Mount Otorten. They were young, strong, and filled with the spirit of adventure, documenting their journey with cameras and keeping detailed diaries along the way. Little did they know their own records would become clues in their own disappearance. The setting for this journey was as beautiful as it was brutal. The Ural Mountains in winter are a landscape of stark contrasts, a vast expanse of white snow, dark forests, and windswept peaks. The isolation is absolute, a silent world where the only sounds are the crunch of skis on snow and the howl of the wind. The group was well prepared for these harsh conditions, carrying high-quality equipment, warm clothing, and sufficient food for their multi-week trek. Their diaries and photographs show them smiling, working together, and facing the challenges of the terrain with confidence and good humor. They traveled by train, then by truck, and finally skied into the deep wilderness, leaving civilization far behind. One member, Yuri Yudin, was forced to turn back early due to illness, a twist of fate that would ultimately save his life and leave him to mourn his friends for decades. The remaining 9 pressed on, deeper into the silent, snowy expanse. They were heading toward their destiny on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a place whose name in the local Mansi language ominously translates to Dead Mountain, a name earned long before the tragedy that would make it infamous around the world. The last entry in the group's journal was made on February 1, 1959. Their final camp was pitched not in the relative safety of the tree line below, but strangely on the exposed, open slope of Kholat Syakhl. This decision has puzzled investigators for decades. Why would such an experienced group choose a location so vulnerable to the elements? The weather had worsened, with high winds and dropping temperatures creating near whiteout conditions. Maybe they became disoriented in the storm and decided to make camp where they were, rather than risk pushing onward in the fading light. Whatever the reason, they settled in for what should have been just another cold night in the Urals. Inside the large, custom-made tent, the 9 hikers prepared for the night. Evidence found later suggests a calm, routine evening. They had eaten a meal and settled down to rest, bundled in their sleeping bags against the piercing cold. The atmosphere, as far as anyone can tell, was peaceful. There were no signs of any internal conflict or panic within the group. Their cameras contained final, poignant images of them setting up the camp, their faces determined but relaxed. They had no idea that this would be their final resting place, the last moments of normalcy before terror descended upon them. The silence of the mountain was soon to be broken. Sometime in the middle of the night, an unknown event triggered a sudden and frantic escape. Something so terrifying happened that it caused the 9 seasoned hikers to do the unthinkable. They did not unzip the entrance to their tent to face the threat. Instead, they used their knives to slash and tear their way out from the inside, ripping through the thick canvas as if their lives depended on an immediate exit. This single act speaks volumes about the sheer panic that must have gripped them. What could possibly frighten 9 experienced mountaineers so badly that they would flee the only shelter they had? They burst from the torn tent into the brutal, sub-zero darkness. The wind would have been howling, whipping snow across the exposed slope. In their haste, they were shockingly underdressed for the conditions. Some were barefoot, others wearing only a single sock. Several had on only their thermal underwear, completely unprepared for the lethal temperatures of a Siberian winter night. They fled downhill, away from the tent, and toward the distant tree line, a full kilometer away. Their desperate flight into the frozen wilderness was the beginning of the end, a frantic scramble away from an unseen horror that left behind a scene of chilling, silent chaos for rescuers to discover weeks later. When the hikers failed to send a telegram by their scheduled return date of February 12th, their families began to worry. At first, the delay was chalked up to the difficult conditions of the expedition, but as days turned into weeks, a search party was organized. On February 26th, a volunteer search pilot spotted something dark against the vast white expanse of Kholat Syakhl. It was the abandoned and partially collapsed tent. The discovery was perplexing from the very first moment. The tent was empty but filled with the group's belongings. Their shoes, warm coats, extra gear, and even their money were all left behind, untouched. The searchers, standing before the ripped and snow-covered tent, were immediately confronted with a disturbing puzzle. The tent had clearly been cut open from the inside, a desperate act that made no logical sense. Outside the tent, a trail of footprints led away from the camp, heading down the slope towards the forest. The footprints were a strange mix. Some were from bare feet, others from socks, and a few from a single boot. They were orderly at first, suggesting the group left together in a controlled, if hurried, manner. But why would they abandon their boots and coats, their only protection from the lethal cold? Following the trail of footprints, the search party made their first grim discovery nearly a mile downhill, just at the edge of the forest. Beneath a large, ancient cedar tree, they found the remains of a small fire. Lying next to it were the first two bodies, Yuri Krivonyshenko and Yuri Doroshenko. Both were stripped down to their underwear and were barefoot. The branches of the cedar tree above them were broken up to a height of 5 meters, suggesting someone had tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view of the tent or to escape something on the ground. Between the cedar tree and the camp, rescuers found 3 more bodies, including that of Igor Dyatlov himself. Their positions suggested they had been trying to make their way back up the treacherous slope to the relative safety of the tent. They had succumbed to hypothermia, frozen solid in the snow. Yet, even in their tragic deaths, there were no signs of a struggle. The first 5 bodies found all officially died of hypothermia, but 4 hikers were still missing. It would take more than 2 months after the snow began to melt for the final and most disturbing chapter of the discovery to unfold in a nearby ravine. The search for the remaining 4 hikers dragged on for 2 long months. Finally, in May, as the deep winter snow began to thaw, their bodies were discovered. They were found buried under 4 meters of snow in a makeshift den dug into the side of a ravine, about 75 meters from the cedar tree. These final discoveries would turn a strange tragedy into an utterly baffling enigma. Unlike the first 5 victims, these 4 had suffered massive and violent injuries. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had crushed chests with multiple broken ribs. Nicholas Thibault Brignoles had sustained a catastrophic skull fracture. These were not injuries one gets from falling or freezing. The nature of these injuries was shocking. A medical examiner compared the force required to cause such damage to that of being hit by a car. Yet, bizarrely, the bodies showed no external signs of trauma. Furthermore, Dubinina was found missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lip. Some of the clothing worn by these last 4 hikers was also found to be radioactive, albeit at low levels. These strange and horrifying details only compounded the mystery and fueled wild speculation about what truly happened that night. With these discoveries, simple explanations like an avalanche began to seem less likely. While a small slab avalanche could have prompted a quick evacuation of the tent, it wouldn't typically cause the type of severe internal injuries seen on the last 4 bodies. Furthermore, investigators at the scene found no definitive evidence of a recent avalanche. The footprints leading from the tent were not covered, and the tent itself was only partially collapsed by snow that had accumulated over weeks. An animal attack was also ruled out. There were no tracks other than those of the hikers, and their injuries were not consistent with any known predator in the region. The official investigation was short-lived and ultimately unsatisfying. Faced with a set of clues that defied easy explanation, Soviet authorities closed the case in May 1959. They concluded that the hikers died as a result of an unknown compelling natural force. This vague and ambiguous ruling effectively sealed the files, leaving the families with no real answers. The area was closed off to the public for years, and the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident was largely suppressed. But the questions remained, simmering beneath the surface. waiting for a new generation of investigators and theorists to try and piece together the impossible puzzle. Decades after the official case was closed, the Dyatlov Pass incident continues to capture the public imagination, spawning countless theories that attempt to explain the unexplainable. The theories range from the plausible to the paranormal. The Avalanche theory, recently supported by complex computer modeling, remains a leading contender. It suggests a small, delayed slab avalanche struck the tent, causing initial panic and some of the internal injuries, forcing the group to flee into the cold. However, it struggles to account for all the bizarre details, such as the missing tongue and the organized retreat from the tent before the footprints descended into chaos. Other theories point to a human element. Could the hikers have stumbled upon a secret military test? The Northern Urals were known to be a site for such activities during the Cold War. This theory could explain the powerful, concussive injuries and perhaps even the traces of radiation found on some of the clothing. Reports of strange orange spheres of light in the sky around the time of the incident have fueled this idea. Others suggest an encounter with escaped prisoners, or even the local Mansi people, though investigations at the time cleared the Mansi of any involvement, as they were known to be peaceful, and their sacred sites were not near the hiker's path. Then there are the more fringe supernatural explanations. These theories speak of infrasound-induced panic, low-frequency sound generated by wind patterns that can cause feelings of intense, irrational fear. Some even whisper of a Russian Yeti or other unknown creatures roaming the vast wilderness. While these ideas are compelling for their sheer strangeness, they lack any concrete evidence. The beauty of the Dyatlov Pass mystery is that no single theory, whether scientific or supernatural, can perfectly account for every single piece of bizarre evidence found on that frozen mountainside. Each explanation leaves nagging, unanswered questions. Today, more than 6 decades later, the story of the 9 hikers who walked into the Ural Mountains and never came out is more famous than ever. It has become a modern legend, a chilling testament to the unknown. The pass where they perished now officially bears Igor Dyatlov's name, a permanent memorial to the tragedy. The incident reminds us that even in our modern world, there are still places where the wilderness holds deep secrets, and some questions may never have answers. The fate of the Dyatlov group remains etched in ice and time, a haunting mystery that continues to challenge our understanding of the world and our place within it.